Testing. Okay, this is on. Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to introduce myself really quick. My name is Mosab Abu Toha, and I'm the Program and Communications Manager here at the Jerusalem Fund. And it's my pleasure to thank you all for coming and welcome you to our first cultural event of the year and our first in-person event of the year, poetry reading and discussion with Mosab Abu Toha. I'd like to say thank you to Middle East Books and More for coming to our event and providing copies of Mosab's book to sell. You can find them out at the front. And also a deep thank you to Falafel Inc. for kindly and generously donating lunch to us today. You can find Falafel in the back, best in the city, in my opinion. And finally, I'd like to thank Ahmed Mansour, who put us in touch with Mosab and really helped bring all of this together. This event could not have occurred without the help of all of you. Thank you so much. Really quick, if you didn't get a chance to sign in the sign-in sheet at the front, I have a sheet right here and I'll pass it around once things get started. And if you can just kindly name, organization, email, phone number, if you feel comfortable sharing, it really helps a lot. And finally, well, not finally, I would like to ask you all to please enjoy lunch in the back, but please don't bring food into the library itself, just to keep things clean. Once things get started, I mean, and also please take a moment right now to silence your cell phones to make sure things don't get interrupted, if you will. Moving on, our moderator for today's discussion will be our very own Saeed. Saeed is a member of the Palestine Center Committee and the Washington Bureau Chief for the Palestinian newspaper Al-Quds, a daily for which he is a writer, columnist, and analyst. He previously served as spokesman and director of public information for the UN Assistance Mission for Iraq, and currently teaches as an adjunct professor at American University in Washington, D.C. And finally, it's time to introduce the man of the hour, Mosab Abu Toha. Mosab, who, by the way, persevered through not one, but two canceled flights yesterday. I don't know if you heard, but things were bananas yesterday. So thank you for persevering. Mosab is a very special up-and-coming poet, short story writer, and essayist from Gaza. He's the author of Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear, Poems from Gaza, published earlier last year, which is the book we're all here to talk about, which also won the 2022 Palestine Book Award. Abu Toha is the founder of the Edward Said Library, and from 2019 to 2020, he was a visiting poet and librarian-in-residence at Harvard University. He's a contributor to the Light in Gaza book, and Mosab is now completing his MFA in creative writing in Syracuse, New York. Please, everyone, join me in welcoming Mosab.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I would like to start tonight's event by thanking the Jerusalem Fund and the Palestine Center, and also Gaza Ambassador for arranging this event. It's my first visit to DC, and it was yesterday was a really horrible day for me. I got 2 flights canceled. I thought maybe there was someone who didn't want me to be in DC, but finally I made it, and I really appreciate your coming today to listen to me, and also to ask me any questions you have after the reading and after the conversation with Saeed. So I'm going to read some poems from my poetry collection, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear, but I'm also going to start by reading some new poems, as I'm working on a new collection, and hopefully I will find the publisher in the future. Okay, so the first poem is titled, so yesterday I was at the Busboys and Poets place, and I read a poem titled What a Gazan Should Do During an Israeli Night Airstrike. So I'm not going to read the same poem of yesterday, but I'm going to read another poem, which is titled What a Gazan Mother Does During an Israeli Night Airstrike. So this is a manual for Gazan mothers, what they should do during Israeli night airstrike. It's not only Israeli airstrike, it's Israeli night airstrikes. What a Gazan mother does during an Israeli night airstrike. She gathers all her kids around in her bed, like one like someone gathering and packing books and clothes before leaving a hotel. She counts her kids every second and looks in their eyes, and she smiles. She sings a night song to bury the sound of bombs in the ground and the whirring of drones in the clouds. She hugs her kids after each bomb. And if she knows a bomb is about to light up the sky and the room, she covers her kids' eyes and loudly asks the kids, "What can you see when your eyes are closed?" Hoping her trembling voice may hide the bomb's deafening sound. Okay. The next poem is called Thanks, and it's written after Yusuf Kamanyaka. Thanks. Thanks to my mother always, but especially when she called for me to join them at the table, just seconds before shrapnel cut through the window glass when I stood to watch distant airstrikes. My mother's voice, the magnet of my life, swayed my head just in time. Plumes of smoke choked the neighborhood. It was night, and when we ran into the street and mother had left the cake in the oven, we smelled the bomb smoke with burnt chocolate and strawberry of the cake. And thanks to the huge clock tower, which saved my life. I was crossing the street and my head, glued to my phone, never heeded the honk of cars or the wheels of vans screeching onto the rough tarmac. The bell tolled for me. Sorry, death, but it was the eve of my birthday. And sorry, Hemingway, to answer your title that way. Okay, I wrote a poem titled 1948, which is the year of the Nakba, when more than 800,000 Palestinians were expelled from their cities and villages, and more than 500 villages were destroyed. I read that poem yesterday at the Bus Boys and Poets, and I'm going to read another 1948. So the title of the poem is Another 1948, which I wrote after I watched the film Farha, which I'm sure some of you have watched it. So it's the story of a girl who was kept hidden in a room when was not Israeli, it was the Zionist gangs invaded the Palestinian cities and towns. So her father put her in a room where they stored some food, so she would be safe. So she could see through a hole in the door a scene that I'm going to read. So everyone have watched this, but this is my poem. Another 1948. Through a hole in a wooden door, Farha is watching a mother giving birth. Husband says, the head is out. It is a boy. No time to think of a name. And the smoke from bombs chokes their laughter, and Farha is in the dark in the room. Her father locked her in for her to be safe. The family and Farha is in the dark about what was going on outside. The family hides when a Haganah Zionist gang screams through speakers and their military jeeps wheels. We are coming. No one stays. Leave if you want to stay alive. The family hides, and the cries of the hungry newborn pulls the family's lives closer to their end. The gang shoots them in the house's yard. The gang severs the family's umbilical cord that tied them around the breakfast table to hide. Now birds and the trees and the sun and the clouds can chat with the family without any fear, and Farha stays in the dark. Okay. I was in Gaza during the May 21 attacks. I had three children who lived through the 11-day attacks in May 2021. So I was taking some videos and some photos. So I'm going to show one of the videos I took of my daughter. She was scared. It was midnight or during that day. And the title of the poem is My Son Throws a Blanket Over My Daughter. So I'm going to show us a very short video, and then I'll read the poem. So this is my daughter, Jaffa.
Yeah,
She's now 6 years old.
yeah.
It's a bomb.
Bomb?
Yes. Oh,
You hear it?
that's a big bomb.
You scared?
Yes.
Where do you want to go?
Just to hide from the bomb.
You want to hide?
Yeah. Just to hide.
You want to hide from the bomb?
Yes. Alright. I
Okay, you're good, okay?
stand.
So my son throws a blanket over my daughter. Gaza, May 2021. At night, at home, we sit on the floor, close to each other and far from the windows and the red lights of bombs. Our backs bang on the walls whenever the house shakes. We stare at each other's face, scared and yet happy that we were lucky that our lives were spared this time. The walls wake up from their fitful sleep. Flies gather around the only lit ceiling lamp for warmth in the cold night, cold except when missiles hit and heat up houses and roads and trees, scorching an adjacent neighborhood. Every time we hear a bomb falling from an F-16 or an F-35, our lives panic. Our lives freeze somewhere in between, confused where to head next, to a graveyard, to a hospital, or to a nightmare. Our lives keep their shivering hands on their wristwatch fingers, ready to remove the batteries if and when needed. My 4-year-old daughter, Jaffa, in her pink dress, hears a bomb explode. She breathes in deep, covers her mouth with her dress's ruffles. Yazan, her 5.5-year-old brother, grabs a blanket, warmed by his sleepy body. He lays the blanket on his sister. You can hide now, he assures her. As for me and my wife, Maram, we pray that a magic blanket would hide all the houses from the bombs and take us to somewhere safe. So this is a poem I wrote before I returned to Gaza in 2021, just 3 months before the May attacks. So the title is Returning Home to Gaza. When I return home, will our house be the same? Will the photo of my grandparents on the beach still hang on the kitchen wall? Or will they be broken after so many explosions and the weight of memory? Will mother be cooking while father is making salad and telling everyone of a monotonous piece of news in the paper, something that has to do with elections, salaries, border crossings? What about the neighbors? Will their kids fill our small garden with joy and laughter? Does their lovely noise still ripen the guava and the peaches and fill the oranges with juice? Do their cries of dreams still make our lemons glitter? Or will they be off at college? Surely not outside Gaza, or even dead, God forbid. I don't know when I will return or if I'm returning at all. I wrote this poem for a class last semester, and it's called OBET, obituary. I wrote an obituary not to someone, but to my shadow. OBET. To the shadow I have lived alone before I crossed the border. My shadow that stayed lonely and hid in the dark of the night, freezing where it was, that never had to pay rent for the space it occupied. To my shadow that's been waiting for my return, homeless except when I was walking by its side in the summer light. To my shadow that wishes to go to school with its children of morning, but couldn't fit into the classroom doors. To my shadow that has caught a cold now, that's been sneezing and coughing, no one saying to it, God bless. To my shadow that's been crushed by cars and vans, my shadow that no one's tending, bleeding black blood through its memory, now and forever. Okay, so one more poem and then parts of a longer poem. So this poem is a letter to my brother Hudayfa, who he was born deaf and mute. He was born in 2000 and he passed away in 2016. And the title is, You Came Into My Dream. All I know is that you came. I paid no attention to your clothing, whether you were holding something in your hand. A letter from there? Are your hands still small? Would they carry a heavy letter written by fate? Fate, whose sharp fingernails scratch open my back's skin every time it misspells my name. I knew I was dreaming, but why haven't I even conversed with you? Maybe ask if you saw grandfather up there. Maybe he's still stuck and planted in Jaffa somewhere, tending an aging orange tree. What kept my mouth from opening? Silence makes my mouth sour. Was I put inside a glass medicine bottle on which they wrote, not keep out of reach of children, but keep silent in and out? Who? What are they? Your sight was fresh and sharp. I felt you could see through me onto my bleeding past. I'm crying, but my tears are cold. My tears are falling on my feet. They burn the tiny dark hairs on my toes. My feet are bare. I have been walking for a long time, and the road is strewn with fear. Okay, in my poetry collection, there is a poem called Notebook, which is comprised of small poems. So I'm working on another notebook, but this one is dated 2021, 2022. I'm going to read just some parts of it. The first one is titled, it says no title. Notebook, 2021, 2022. My two eyes, when closed, each see different things. One, me leaving Gaza in peace, in one piece. One, me getting jailed at the air is a crossing point. My head, a confused old TV channel picking up crossed signals. At 5th grade, I visit the school library. On one wall next to the door, a poster claims, if you read books, you live more than one life. Now I'm 30, and whenever I look at faces around me, old or young, on the foreheads I read, if you live in Gaza, you die several times. Okay, this is maybe a funny one. She asked her teacher, if there are 4 directions, then why do we have only 2 feet? Okay. Stones of house after explosion get Alzheimer's. Some forget they were in a wall, in a bedroom or a kitchen or a bathroom, some in a ceiling. Some forget they sat behind photo albums for years, behind photo frames for years. A few stones forget those hit by the bombs. They forget they were stones. Okay, one last poem from this. I wrote a poem about the children from the Bakr family. So in 2014, Israel targeted a group of 8 children who were playing soccer ball on the beach, and some journalists who were staying in some hotels. I think they took some videos, and I walked in the funeral of the 4 killed kids. So I wrote a poem. So they were 8 kids, but 4 of them were killed. So the poem has a caption. It says, Gaza, July 16, 2014, boys from Bakr family. Children play soccer ball on the beach. They are 8. 8 bombs thump the field. 4 kids killed, 4 wounded. Without checking his watch, the referee announces a draw, 4-4. He knows the game should be over unless there are more planes, more bombs, more goals. The audience, the waves, no longer cheers. An ambulance worker glimpses the ball the kids used to entertain. The soccer ball unharmed. The referee blows a second final whistle. On the smashed scoreboard, the kids' team wins. Okay, so these are some new poems. I'm going to read some of the poems from my collection. So the first poem, it's a unique one, at least to me. It's titled Palestine AZ. So it's a dictionary that I created for myself and maybe for others, and every one of you can create their own dictionary. So for each letter in the alphabet, I picked 2 words. So from the letter A, I had the words apple and am, and what they meant to me. So I'm going to read a few letters with their entries. A, an apple that fell from the table on a dark evening when man-made lightning flashed through the kitchen, the streets, and the sky, rattling the cupboards and breaking the dishes. Am is the linking verb that follows I in the present tense when I am no longer present, when I am shattered. B, a book that doesn't mention my language or my country and has maps of every place except for my birthplace, as if I were an illegitimate child on Mother Earth. Borders are those invented lines drawn with ash on maps and sewn into the ground by bullets. C, Gaza is a city that tourists gather to take photos next to destroyed buildings or graveyards. A country that exists only in my mind. Its flag has no room to fly freely, but there is a space on the coffins of my countrymen. D, Dar means house. My grandparents left their house behind in 1948 near Jaffa Beach. A tree my father told me about stood in the front yard. The dreams of children and their parents, of listening to songs and watching plays at Al-Bishal Cultural Center. Israel destroyed it in August 2018. I hate August, but plays are still performed in Gaza. Gaza is the stage. Images on the walls of buildings, a child who was shot by an Israeli sniper or killed during an air raid en route to school. Her picture was placed on her desk at school. Her picture stares at the blackboard while the air sits in her chair. I wake up ill when gloomy ideas about what might have happened to me come in my dreams. What if I had stopped for a few seconds at the window when a bullet from nowhere ripped through the glass? Okay. My grandfather kept the key to his house in Jaffa in 1948. He thought they would return in a few days. His name was Hassan. The house was destroyed. Others built a new one in its place. Hassan died in Gaza in 1986. The key has rusted, but it still exists somewhere, longing for the old wooden door. Oh, Jaffa is known around the world for its oranges. My grandmother Khadra tried to take some oranges with her in 1948, but the shelling was heavy. The oranges fell on the ground. The air drank their juice. It was sweet, I'm sure. Okay, I'm gonna skip to letter R. I was born in November. My mother told me she was walking on the beach with my father. It turned stormy and began to rain. My mother felt pain and an hour later, she gave birth to me. I love the rain and the sea. The last two things I heard before I came into this horrible world. Tea. In summer, I drink tea with mint. In winter, I added dried sage. Anyone who visits, even if it's a neighbor knocking at the door to ask about what day or date it is, I offer them tea. Offering tea is like saying marhaba, hello. Why? Jaffa is my daughter's name. I put my ears near her mouth when she speaks, and I hear Jaffa's sea, waves lapping against the shore. I look in her eyes, and I see my grandparents' footsteps still imprinted on the sand. Okay. What is home? This is another point. What is home? It is the shade of trees on my way to school before they were uprooted. It is my grandparents' black and white wedding photo before the walls crumbled. It is my uncle's prayer rug, where dozens of ants slept on wintry nights before it was looted and put in a museum. It is the oven my mother used to bake bread and roasted chicken before a bomb reduced our house to ashes. It is the cafe where I watched football matches and played. My child stops me. Can a four-letter word hold all of these? Okay, I have in my book, I have 9 photos, and every photo comes with a small poem. So this is the photo of an UNRWA school, which during the Israeli attacks, I mean, most schools in Gaza turned into a shelter for people who couldn't stay where they were. So I took this photo in 2014. So this war lasted for about 51 days, and about more than 2,000 Palestinians were killed. So for this photo, I wrote, the title is Midterm Test. The question is, when a drone follows you on your way to school, what is it doing? A, it's keeping an eye on you so you won't get hit by a car. B, it's watching in case you lose your pocket money on the way. C, it's counting your steps to make sure you are getting your daily exercise. Or D, it's covering your head in case an F-16 drops a bomb on you by mistake. Okay, so this poem is called A Litany for One Land. For those living on the other side, we can see you. We can see the rain when it pours on our fields, on our valleys. And when it slides down the roofs of your modern houses built atop our homes. Can you take off your sunglasses and look at us here? See how the rain has flooded our streets, how the children's umbrellas have been pierced by a prickly downpour on their way to school. The trees, you see, have been watered with our tears. They bear no fruit. The red roses take their color from our blood. They smell of death. The river that separates us from you is just a mirage you created when you expelled us. It is one land. For those who are standing on the other side, shooting at us, spitting on us, how long can you stand there, fenced by hate? Are you going to keep your black glasses on until you are unable to put them down? Soon, we won't be here for you to watch. It won't matter if you blink your eyes or not, if you can stand or not. You won't cross that river to take more lands because you will vanish into your mirage. You can't build a new colony on our graves. And when we die, our bones will continue to grow, to reach and intertwine with the roots of the olive and orange trees, to bathe in the sweet Jaffa Sea. One day, we will be born again when you are not there, because this land knows us. She is our mother. When we die, We are just resting in her womb until the darkness is clear. For those who are not here anymore, we have been here forever. We have been speaking, but you never cared to listen. Okay, for this poem, I will play a couple of short videos. So the two videos are from the last May 21 attacks. So Israel attacked Gaza during this night for about an hour at midnight. The video that you are going to see, it happened for about an hour continuously. So you are just going to see about a minute and a half. So I just want you to watch, because after the bombings, we woke up to the news that about 50 people were killed during those attacks. One of the families that were killed is called At-Tanani family, and that's the family, both the parents and their 4 children were killed in that attack. They were trying to escape the bombing, but they were buried under the rubble of their house. So the poem is titled Shrapnil Looking for Laughter, and I will read it after I show the videos. Slide. Okay, good. Thank you.
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
So this is the other video, and I want you to just want you to notice how the sound of the bombing gets louder every time. So this, you will notice how the sound is louder here. So the poem is Shrapnel Looking for Laughter. The house has been bombed. Everyone dead. The kids, the parents, the toys, the actors on TV, characters in novels, personas in poetry collections, the I and the he and the she, no pronouns left, not even for the kids when they learn parts of speech next year. Shrapnel flies in the dark, looks for the family's peals of laughter, hiding behind piles of disfigured walls and bleeding picture frames. The radio no longer speaks. Its batteries have burnt. The antenna is broken. Even the broadcaster felt the pain when the radio was hit. Even we, hearing the bomb as it fell, threw ourselves to the ground, each of us counting the others around them. We were safe, but our hearts still ache. Okay. I'll read something different. This poem is titled Edward Said, Noam Chomsky, and Theodore Adorno in Gaza. Okay. What brought these people to Gaza? I don't know. I mean, Edward Said I think, visited Gaza. Noam Chomsky visited Gaza. I first met him in 2012 when he came to visit the Islamic University of Gaza, where I was studying. But Theodore Adorno, I don't think he ever visited Palestine. But the three of them can be present in Gaza in one sitting. So Edward Said, Noam Chomsky, and Theodore Adorno in Gaza. Dust tiptoes in a standing ovation after the explosion. Light hits the icy earth, fades into the town's potholes. Edward Said is out of place again. So out of place is a title of Edward's memoir. So Edward Said is out of place again. His books fall from my shelves out into the broken window glass. Palestine is also out of place. Its map falls off my wall. Edward's exile bleeds again of wars, of continued estrangement. Chomsky innately repairs the wounds, the wounded words, applying bandages from his universal grammar kit. Adorno tries to study the music of the falling bomb and shattering a glass, but the words slipping from the books mystify his sight and mind. The dust covers his glasses. The musical score lies breathless near his shivering feet. Okay, I'll end with reading two poems. I don't want to read a lot, but I'll read a couple of poems. One, I'll read part of a long poem. It's titled "The Wounds." So in Israel's attack in 2008, 2009, I was 16 at the time, and I was wounded during that attack. I got some shrapnel in my forehead, one in my neck, and one in my shoulder. I was going to buy something for my little siblings. I wrote this poem 2 years ago, which means about 11 years after my wounds. So, the wounds. A Saturday, first day of the week in Gaza, age 16, and after the first finals, I finished my Arabic exam. I liked Arabic as much as I liked English and soccer. I discussed my answers with my father. Home by noon, we stood on the roof of our house, watched the pigeons my father raised as a hobby. The limitless ceiling above us was part blue, part white. Ships of clouds sailing slowly in windless sky. A series of explosions shook the house, the neighborhood, shook the air. Words fell from my mouth, broke on my stiff, bare feet. Birds from nowhere flew aimlessly in the open sky. Some hid in trees. The pigeons in their big coop trembled. Rock pigeons, Egyptian pigeons, king pigeons, and Halabi pigeons. A tiny egg fell. My answers must have fallen off the pages of my exam, maybe melting from fear. I saw black smoke rise from a building a few kilometers away, blacker than the ink on my exam sheets. We didn't hear the F-16s until they finished their strikes. They descended from the inferno. Dante hadn't mentioned them. About 80 F-16 aircraft with their bombs struck Gaza in unison, like a big drum roll announcing someone's death. But it was more than one death, I thought. It had to be. We hurried to the radio, that old dirty box that usually vomits blood and body parts into our ears, hospitals full of burning wounds, moans, a corpse, and a girl missing her leg, lying on a cot or a bloody floor. And then I'm going to skip. So I'll read the part when I got wounded. Barely 16, I am on my way to the grocery shop to buy some damn eggs. I love boiled eggs. I see a large crowd of people gathering at the crossroad. I get curious. I walk toward them. Being small, I cannot see through the crowd. A yellow light hits. My head's split open. I feel that somehow The light might help me see more clearly, I tell myself. Blood drips onto my eyelashes and hoodie. And the brief moments standing there, I'm asking myself, how come you can't stand while your head is slashed open? Everyone around me has collapsed to the ground, fallen like beads of sweat. I still stand. The picture freezes before me. The smell of gunpowder crawls into my lungs. Like a madman, I begin to run around. Someone gives me a tissue to wipe the blood on my left cheek and forehead. I need much more than that. It's not only my cheek and forehead. The shrapnel has also blown holes in my neck and shoulder. I'm no longer wearing my slippers, and the 5 shekels have disappeared. I look around, people are rushing toward us. A vehicle approaches, ambulance, it says, but there's no paramedic, first aid, no bed to lie on. Come on, it's my first time being wounded. I get inside. Someone throws a corpse in next to me. The body burnt, maybe no head. I don't look at it. The smell is so bad. I'm so sorry, whoever you are, the smell of death. I open the window for fresh air. The ambulance driver doesn't ask me how I am. At a Shifa hospital, people in and out, I walk to the emergency room. No one looks at me. I sit on the ground next to other people, wounded people. Some lie on the floor like burnt matches. A nurse who checks on me sees the hole in my neck and the wounds on my face. She starts to touch my abdomen and back to see if there's any wound I cannot heal. An elevator carries my gurney upstairs to the radiology room. A doctor tends to my wounds. Someone is looking after me. An hour passes. My father and brother walk in. My brother points to the wound in my neck. Your index finger can fit in that hole. It's centimeters from your windpipe. If, when the rocket fell, I had moved my head a bit to watch a bird on a tree or to count some clouds coming from the west side, the shrapnel might have cut through my throat. I wouldn't be married to my wife, father of 3 kids, one born in America. My brother tells me, hearing the explosion and knowing you hadn't returned home yet, we assumed you were dead. We began searching for you in the morgue. I look around me. Relatives circle my bed. I watch them as they chat. I imagine them praying round my coffin. Okay, the last poem I'm going to read is the title poem, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear. And I wrote the first part of this poem after I had a surgery on my right ear in Massachusetts when I was at Harvard. So I wrote this first section and I sent it to my doctor in a text message, and she said, this is a good poem. So I wrote this first section. So I told her what I wanted her to do to keep in my ear. And then I continued with the second section, and you will see what it's about. Things you may find hidden in my ear, for Alicia M. Kusnell, MD. 1. When you open my ear, touch it gently. My mother's voice lingers somewhere inside. Her voice is the echo that helps me recover equilibrium when I feel dizzy during my attentiveness. You may encounter songs in Arabic, poems in English I recite to myself, or a song I chant to the chirping birds in our backyard. When you stitch the cut, don't forget to put all these back in my ear. Put them back in order, as you would do with the books on your shelf. 2. The drone's buzzing sound, the roar of an F-16, the screams of bombs falling on houses, on fields, on bodies, of rockets flying away. Rid my tiny ear canal of them all. Spray the perfume of your smiles on the incision. Inject the song of life into my veins to wake me up. Gently beat the drum so my mind may dance with yours, my doctor, day and night. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. It is working. I think Ahmed warned me that I need God's help in conducting a conversation with you, and I said I agree. I mean, this is
Why?
because I think you presented us with a very profoundly compelling chronicle, really, of what's going on in Gaza. It is so intricate and it is so detailed. You know, I mean, it's and really does tell the story. So I don't know how to thank you. I mean, whether I should thank you really, because we see this so plainly, and we see this image so plainly. I mean, you know, I want to ask you about all the people that you talked about. You know, I want to see what happened to them. You know, how was Jaffa, and how was Yazin? How was your sister Saja? You know, that was 3 years old, I think, when because I was reading when this last poem took place when you were 16, I believe. Yeah. So I mean, it is all just really a step-by-step walk through the tragedy, the agony of what Palestinians go through, but also their perseverance, you know, their ability to go on, their ability just to look for the next day and go on hopefully, and so on, you know, from the ambulance, a driver that doesn't say anything, you know, just takes you, to one assuming that their son, their father, their husband is dead because he hasn't showed up or they did not hear from him. I mean, all this is part of a daily life for you, you know, and Gaza endures. Gaza endures. I mean, you talked about the 8 kids, 8 bombs for 8 kids, 8 bombs for 8 kids. I mean, imagine this, you know, 8 bombs for 8 kids. Let this sink in, you know. So each kid was allocated a bomb by the Israelis. People allocate gifts for kids. The Israelis allocate a bomb for each child. I think these kind of images, you know, do not leave you untouched. You know, they should, for me, you know, I'm an old man. You know, I'm left shaken, and although I have been through some of these events that have, you know, penetrated our lives as Palestinians, whether in the West Bank or Gaza or Beirut or many other places, to, you know, which I witnessed and so on. So I don't know where to begin, honestly. I mean, you know, some of the images are loving and fantastic. I mean, you talked about coming home, wondering whether your father would be making the salad, for instance. And I can assure you all that all Palestinian fathers are wonderful salad makers. We make the best salads in the world. So many different types of salad, you know. So these are, you know, I mean, all these images, you know, that you shared with us, make us, in a way, you know, at least for the presentation time, live that life. So my question to you, you know, is a simple one. When did you begin to write poetry? What compelled you to write poetry in English, no less?
Okay, thank you for your words. I'm really glad to be in conversation with you and to have such a beautiful audience. So I mean, it's a harder question to answer when it's just the same question you ask a child. Were you aware of yourself when you started to crawl and then to lean on walls to walk and then start walking on your own and then starting to run? So one finds himself writing poetry or whatever creative form without realizing that they are producing something that others would see as poetry or something. So I was posting something about the Israeli attacks in 2014 on Facebook, and I never thought of writing poems in the real way, but people were just commenting on my post about the poeticness of what I'm writing. So I thought if what I was writing was looked at as poetry to them, then I would like to continue doing this. So I was just writing what I was seeing in front of me, what I was hearing other people saying, and I've been always a photo-taking person. So I think my love for taking photographs is one reason why I like to write poetry. The details, the things that I can see in my eye, and put them onto the page.
Well, you know, your poetry really paints a picture, so, and paints a photograph, and with all the details and so on. Now, let me ask you another basic question. Do you write poetry in Arabic?
Yeah, okay. So I'm a bilingual poet, and it's very strange, maybe to many people, because my first collection is for my poetry that's written in English, not in Arabic, my mother tongue. So I was more successful when I started writing in English than in the Arabic language. And I think maybe one reason is because we don't have publishers in the Arab world as much as we have publishers in the English language world. And I think people nowadays in the West especially are very supportive of creative people. In the Arab world, on the other hand, people are just very concerned with their everyday lives. People don't spend much time reading maybe poetry, just like in the past, and that's because of the occupations, the political situations in the Arab world. But generally, I do write poetry in Arabic, and I have some poems published in Al-Arab al-Jadid, and also Al-Jadid, and also in Al-Ayyam, which is a major Arabic language a newspaper in Palestine. And I'm working on publishing my first poetry collection in Arabic.
Well, I just want to pay tribute to great poets from Gaza. Mu'in Bsayso is one, May Sayer is another, and many, many more whom, you know, I've had the privilege of meeting and knowing in my lifetime. So when you write in Arabic and in English, do you ever try to translate your poetry from one language to another, or you chart a new poem altogether that is not related to the other?
Well, I only had one experiment, not in translation. So I've never translated any poem of mine into English or into Arabic. So what I write in English, I just write it in English from the start. And I'm part of the MFA program at Syracuse University. And this is Emma, my colleague, who's visiting DC, and I have the honor of her being here. So I write my poetry in English. And some of the poems that I wrote them during a class last semester, the poem OBET, and also the poem Thanks after Yusuf Komuniaka. We studied one of his poems and we wrote a response to that poem. So generally when I write in English, I have maybe a specific audience in my mind. I'm telling stories that I want other people in the West, especially in America, to know about. So for example, I wrote a poem about the mirror in English. Or no, I first wrote a poem about mirror al-mir'ah in Arabic. And in it, I talked about the mirror yearning to return to its original form, which is the sand. A mirror feeling jealous of us when we look at us in the mirror. She sees us in the room. I mean, it, because in Arabic, a mirror is a she. So it looks at us, it watches us when we are changing our clothes. And when it watches us weeping, and it wants to extend a tissue to wipe our tears when we remember our dead brother or sister. And it also hears the sound of other people in the street. So I wrote this poem in Arabic. I wrote that poem in Arabic. And then I was thinking, if I wanted to write a poem about the same thing, which is mirror in English. So I tried that, and it was a different poem. So the mirror to me in Arabic, when I wrote it, the words, you know, the idioms for the mirror in Arabic are different from the association of the word mirror in English. So when I wrote the poem Mirror in English, I talked about the mirror. So I ended that poem with saying, the poem when I heard my name pronounced incorrectly in English, when the health insurance agent called me, he pronounced my name incorrectly. So my name is Mosab. So he said Mosab. So that's not my name. So when I heard my name pronounced incorrectly, the mirror collapsed and it broke. Yeah. And the same mirror was just watching me how vain I am, just dressing myself in nice clothes, while it could see me when I'm naked. It could see how ugly I am without clothes. So it could see me, it could see, who I am and who I want to be looked at. So this is the only thing that I tried my pen with, writing about the same thing in different languages.
I don't want to suck all the oxygen, so I'm going to turn to you very shortly, but I want to ask you, one would assume that you've shared some of your poetry at Harvard or Syracuse. How were you received? How was your poetry received? Did your audience or listeners react to your words, to the content, or to the imagery that you painted?
I think many of the people who read my poetry, they were learning about what I was writing about. I mean, Palestine, Gaza, where I come from, my heritage as an Arab, but also with the images that I'm using. So one mentor said, you use a lot of personification in your poetry. And I think he thought that I was using that on purpose, just to personify everything. The book is just looking, just like the mirror was looking at me and it wanted to give me a t-shirt to wear. So maybe that's something he noticed, and he thought I was doing that on purpose. But I told him, no, everything I send to you, I don't rework it before I send it to you. So that's a first draft. I don't just finish the first draft and then try to make up new images to make them seem attractive or figurative in language. No, this is how I write. I don't do something to impress other people, but this is how I write. And here we have she can tell us if she can say something about my poetry, because she read a lot of my poems in workshop and others.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn to you all, and I'm going to turn to you, Emma, to make a couple of comments. So, yes, yeah. So please go ahead. Can you give the?
The first poem that Mosab submitted to our workshop was Things You May Find in My Ear. And we were all blown away. It was better than anyone else's. And yeah, I mean, I think very well received. It's been an honor to read Mosab's work for the last 3 years.
Well, we thank you, Emma, and thank you for being here. And anyone else would like to speak? Yes, please.
Are there either any literary groups or humanitarian agencies you're aware of that would be receptive to, reading, presenting your work, making it available to people there?
Okay, I'm sure many people in Israel, not many, I mean, some people in Israel read my poetry, and they find it very important for them to read. So you can find some people there maybe reading, and some of them wanted to translate some of my poems into Hebrew, which I don't have a big problem with. I mean, I'm just very concerned with delivering my message. And I want people there, I mean, anywhere, not only in Israel, but here, to know what they are doing to us. So in my poem, it is a litany for one land. So these people on the other side, they are not looking at us. They are pretending that they can see us. And I think it's very important for people, no matter where they live, to read our work and to learn from us and to see the reality on the ground. And I'm sure there are, but I don't have any contacts with anyone.
That actually answered my question. I wanted to ask you whether you are in contact with anyone. Because there are, for instance, you could publish in Haaretz English, for instance, or something like this. I wonder if you've attempted to do that. Or
Arts in Hebrew or in English?
no, in English, because they do have the English. No, I'm saying just as an example, because they do have a cultural page.
Yeah, I was approached by an American friend who lives in Israel. And there are some good people who know what's going on in Palestine is wrong. And they want to change things on minor levels. I mean, at least individually telling other. So one friend of mine who lives in New Hampshire or Vermont, sorry, she went to visit Jaffa last summer, and she sent me some photos. She said, "Oh, I went to Jaffa and I took some pictures for you." Yeah, so she respects me, and she's also a fellow writer. She's a great supporter. She went to visit Palestine or Palestine, Israel now. And she took some photos and she sent them to me. And I told her, maybe next time you go and look for any person who has the same surname as me. Maybe there are some relatives of mine who live there that I'm not aware of. I mean, I don't know if there are other people who have the same surname, who are from my family, who still live there. And I want to know. I'm not allowed to leave Gaza and visit. I'm not only returning, I want to visit and see my grandparents' house, where it was, etc. Because there are, in the past, thousands of workers used to go to Israel to work. I mean, after 1967. And there are still workers who go to work in Israel as workers, as farmers, as whatever work
permits. Yeah.
Yeah, they have work permits. But I don't think I'm allowed to go there, either as a worker or as a visitor. And I don't know if I should do this. I mean, this is a huge issue. Yeah.
Please.
Thank you for being here with us, Mosab.
Thank you, Gaza Ambassador.
How do you process your trauma through writing your poetry?
I think most of the poems I write, not more, I don't know, I can't say, but a lot of the poems I wrote them after, let's say, after months of the incidents and the experiences that I wrote them about. So, for example, the poem, The Wounds, I wrote it just 2 years ago, which means 11 years after the incident, my wounds. So this means that my wounds are still fresh. I could remember every detail during the Israeli attack when I was wounded, and also what happened to my neighbors. So, for example, there is one guy whose name is Ghassan, who was killed during one of the attacks. So he was born in Qatar, and they returned to live in Gaza, and he was killed in Gaza. Let me just see here. Yeah, so here, at the same ambulance attack, my new neighbor was murdered, Ghassan Abu Amrain, barely 20. Now I'm older than he was. Ghassan went out to buy bread for his mother. He didn't return home. The family got worried, turned on the radio to check if his name was announced. This has been how we learned about our dead. A hospital secretary who knew the family called that night. He told them about an unidentifiable young man lying in the morgue. Wondered if it was Ghassan. The news about Ghassan's death arrived, not him. So I think writing about these things helps me recover from some of the traumatic experiences. And I do think that writing is a healing process, because many of us have nightmares and we don't know the source or sources of these traumas until we write about them, because through writing I can, it's something like you are pulling something from your subconscious, and you can kill these memories sometimes. You can bury them in the drawer or maybe under the earth.
It's interesting because I thought, for me, I'm also from Gaza. I had the same journey, but I failed in writing. That's why I ended up making movies. So I'm jealous, but I think
I think there are different ways of being a creative, and so for example, Mahmoud Darwish, he said, Mahmoud Darwish is the major Palestinian poet. So he said because he's dead, he said in one interview that he wanted to be a painter when he was a child, but his father couldn't afford to buy him colors. So he became a poet. And Ahmed had the luxury, or maybe the honor, of being a director. So every one of us can be a drawer of things, whether through pictures, through painting, through words, through films, and through also talking to other people who want their voices to be heard, just like you have.
Yeah. I'm reminded of one Palestinian intellectual, I don't remember who, but it may have been Edward Saeed, who said that all Palestinians have one profession. They are Palestinians. And everything else that they do is no more than a sideshow. I mean, you could be a doctor, or you could be a designer, or you could be an engineer, but actually your profession is you're a Palestinian. You live this cause, you breathe it, day in and day out. You have a question, Muhammad, please. Just taller, right here.
Okay, yeah, that's on. Just want to make sure people on the stream can hear. As you know, poets in Palestinian culture and in the community have a very special place. And like more than essayists, more than novelists, more than playwrights to an extent, poetry in Arabic language for the Arabs in general, but also in Palestine in particular, means something very special. Why do you think that is, Mosab? And also as a follow-up to that, if you want to address it, did you, in writing here versus writing back home, was there a change in tone, or what would come to mind, or what would lead to your heart that you'd want to express when you're in the United States or in the West versus back home?
So your first question is about poetry?
Poetry, poets in general, for Palestinians and for Arabs in general, like what it means to be a poet and the power that poetry has specifically for our people.
Thank you. So poetry in the Arabic tradition is a holy thing. I mean, the Arabs in the past used to celebrate when a poet is born, because a poet is a spokesperson for his tribe. And for us in Palestine, specifically, not to say in the Arab world, but in Palestine, we need to speak up about the catastrophes that had befallen us. Any poet is a spokesperson of himself, but not only himself, but of his nation. So Mahmoud Darwish was the national poet of Palestine, although he hated to be called that. He was, after the Oslo Accords, he was asked to be the Minister of Culture, but he refused that. He wanted to be a poet. So Arabic poetry is unlike any other poetry. And why Arabic poetry is really sacred? Because when God wanted to challenge the Arabs back, 14 centuries ago, when Prophet Muhammad was sent to his people, God sent with him the Quran. Why? Because the Arabs think that the thing that the Arab people were very proud about was poetry. So God came with this text, which is the Holy Quran, to challenge them if they can come up with a more perfect text. So poetry, if poetry was something little, why would God send a text that would challenge it? So poetry is a holy thing. But now it's not only poetry, it's Palestinian poetry. We are not talking about love or just about nature or just about personal traumas, but you are talking about a national trauma, a collective trauma. So that's why poetry in Palestine is very important. Yeah, so your other question is about my poetry. I think my journey to the US and my spending time here away from Gaza helped me see Gaza differently. And I would liken this to oneself looking at themselves in the mirror very closely. You just put the mirror just very close to you. You won't see your whole body. You won't see your whole face. So you have to just go back a little bit in order to see the whole picture. And I think my traveling to the US helped me see Gaza from abroad, from a very far distance. And I was lucky to be here and to have new experiences, because you cannot know what kind of a prison you were in until you leave it. So that's very funny, because I think if you ask any Gazan who has never left Gaza, if you ask them, how big do you think planet Earth is? They would say it's maybe 100 times bigger than Gaza, because the word to them is Gaza. So, oh, maybe 1,000 times, let's say. But when I left Gaza, the first time I went on a plane was in 2019 on my trip from Cairo to Amman, and I felt very scared when the plane went up. I was 27. I mean, here in the US, people travel when they are infants with their families. But for me, 27, and I was very scared on the plane. And then I could see the planet, the Egypt becoming closer and closer and closer. And then in my second trip in the US by car, it was with Emma. We traveled from Syracuse to New York City, and it took us 5 hours in the car. 5 hours from Syracuse to New York City. That's within the US itself. That's within the state of New York itself. 5 hours in the car. You can cross Gaza from its south to its north just within 40 minutes. So if we are just traveling within the same state and it took us 5 hours or maybe 6. So this planet is bigger than 100 times compared to Gaza. So I think this is one of the things that I learned about. So I started to see things differently. The universe is now different. Nature is different to me.
Yes, I will go back to you in a minute, but I think you just made a great case, or you made a great case for open immigration to this country. This country is huge, by the way. We should all support an open immigration to it. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So, in several of your poems, you mentioned the F-16. And I happen to know that that's an American-built plane.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact is that it's the American government that has always supported Israel's, genocide policies, supported them. And I think about that when it's time to pay my taxes. How can I support these policies? It's almost as if the US is a client state of Israel. If you look at how many billions of dollars we give to Israel on a yearly basis, you would say that that forms the backbone of our foreign policy. Not loaning, but giving. So I'll stop there, but there's a complicity here. And in maybe there's a blindfold, or maybe we're afraid to do anything because donors with a lot of money will claim that we're being anti-Semitic if we say anything about equality. So I was just wondering if you had a comment on that.
Maybe I mentioned this yesterday. So in Palestine, and just like in any other part in the world, we study literature, we study American literature, and we appreciate it, we write about it, and we learn from it. So in 2014, my university's administration building was targeted by the Israeli army. And of course, the weapons were from the US. And one of the books that I was able to rescue from under the rubble of my English department was the Norton Anthology of American Literature. So many authors were buried under the rubble of the English department where I studied. And the bonds that were used to bond my university, where we study English and American and world literature, were paid by America. And I think for you as an American, maybe you can counter your maybe involuntary donation, tax paying by helping and supporting Palestinians, not as individuals, but as communities, as cultural centers, for them to benefit from. Maybe this is one way of trying to evade the sense of guilt that you have, maybe supporting other initiatives. We have Gaza Ambassador. I have the Edward Said Public Library that I founded in Gaza in 2016, and now it has 2 branches, and a third one joined us from East Jerusalem. So I think this is one good way of trying to fix things.
Well, maybe you could share some places where people could donate.
Yeah.
For taxes.
Well, okay, so there is Mecca, Middle East Children's Alliance.
Yeah, we'll put a list and we'll put it out.
Okay.
Sure,
Give it to.
no problem.
Okay, I want to thank you all for coming, and of course, I want to thank our guests who have done a fabulous job. But I want to respond to your question on American. Look, let's not kid ourselves. In this partnership between the US and Israel, the bigger partner is the US. Israel is no more than a client state. It's not the other way around. So this country, still sees it in its interest to continue to support the Israeli genocide, as you said it, or whatever term and whatever political term is used to describe what's going on. But let's not forget, this country is the premier imperialist country. It was founded as an empire. I mean, early on. It's not. I think the country was 11 years old when they sent in the Marines, or they sent in their ships to the shores of North Africa. Until today, the Marine hymn that we sing, from the shores of Montezuma to the sands of Tripoli, or from the sands of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, is that really tells you. So it's only when Americans begin to see this injustice, much like they my generation turned against the war in Vietnam. My generation turned against apartheid in South Africa. And only when Americans begin to see this, I think we will see the tide turn. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you. Before I go, I promise this: if you want the poetry book, if you want Mosab poem, just go to the Middle East Books at www.middleeastbooks.com, please, and buy a copy. It will enrich your library, and you can buy it there, even better. Thank you. Thank you.